The dirt beneath Willa Mae Mitchell's worn boots had turned to mud from her own tears, and she knew that by sunset tomorrow, she would belong to whatever man had $30 and a taste for broken things. Her father sat across the rickety table in their one-room shack outside Joplin, Missouri, counting coins that wouldn't even cover half his gambling debts, and she felt the last shred of her childhood dissolve like sugar in rain. "It ain't personal, girl," her father muttered, not meeting her eyes. "A man does what he must to survive." Willa Mae was 17 years old in the autumn of 1878, and she had learned that survival came in many cruel forms. Her mother had died 3 winters back from fever, and since then, her father had spiraled into a darkness made of whiskey and cards. The farm had gone to seed, the animals had been sold off one by one, and now, apparently, so would she. "There's a man coming tomorrow from Nevada, Missouri," her father continued, his voice rough as sandpaper. "He runs a saloon, needs girls to work for him. He will pay good money and you will go willing like, you understand." She understood perfectly. She understood that she had no choice, no voice, no future beyond what men decided for her. She nodded slowly, her honey-colored hair falling across her face like a veil between her and this nightmare. That night, Willa Mae lay on her thin mattress and stared at the ceiling, watching shadows dance in the lamplight. She tried to remember her mother's face, her mother's voice, but grief had worn those memories smooth like river stones. What she could remember was her mother's advice. "Stay strong, my darling girl. The world is hard on women, but we are harder than they know." The man who came the next day was exactly what Willa Mae had feared. Sheila's gentry was thick around the middle, with small eyes that assessed her like she was livestock. He wore a bowler hat and a suit that had seen better days, and when he smiled, she saw more gaps than teeth. "She's a pretty thing," Gentry said, walking around her in a slow circle. "She will do fine at the Silver Rose. The men will like her well enough." Her father took the money without ceremony, without even a goodbye. As Willa Mae climbed into the back of Gentry's wagon, she looked back once at the shack that had been her home. Her father had already gone inside, probably to count his blood money. She felt nothing. The part of her that could feel had cauterized itself shut. The journey to Nevada, Missouri took most of the day. Gentry said little, which suited Willa Mae fine. She watched the landscape roll past, the farms giving way to forest, then back to farms again. Fall had painted the trees in shades of rust and gold, and she thought how beautiful the world looked even as her own world was ending. Nevada was a town that had sprung up along the railroad, full of rough men and rougher opportunities. The Silver Rose Saloon sat on the main street, a 2-story building with peeling paint and windows that looked like tired eyes. Gentry led her through the back entrance, up a narrow staircase that smelled of tobacco and desperation. "You will share a room with Lily and Grace," he told her, pushing open a door to reveal a cramped space with 3 narrow beds. "You will work 6 nights a week. You will be friendly to the customers, you will encourage them to drink, and you will do whatever else I tell you to do. You try to run and I will find you. You cause trouble and you will regret it. We clear?" "Yes, sir," Willa Mae whispered, because what else could she say? Lily turned out to be a woman of about 30 with red hair and a weary smile. Grace was younger, maybe 20, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. They were kind to Willa Mae in the way that women who share suffering often are. They showed her the ropes, taught her how to dodge wandering hands, how to laugh at crude jokes without really laughing, how to survive. The weeks blurred together. Willa Mae served drinks, forced smiles, and counted the days until her 18th birthday in January. She told herself that once she was 18, she would find a way out. She would save money somehow, steal it if she had to, and disappear west where no one knew her name. It was a thin hope, but she clung to it like a drowning woman clings to driftwood. Winter came hard that year. Snow piled in the streets, and the saloon stayed busy with men seeking warmth and whiskey. Willa Mae had learned to make herself small, to deflect attention, to slip away when things got too rough. But Gentry was watching her more closely now, talking about how she owed him for room and board, how she would need to do more than just serve drinks to pay her way. It was 2 weeks after her 18th birthday, on a bitter cold night in late January 1879, when everything changed. The cowboy who walked into the Silver Rose looked different from the usual clientele. He was young, maybe 22 or 23, tall and lean with dark hair that needed cutting. He wore range clothes, dusty from travel, and he moved with the easy grace of a man comfortable in his own skin. But it was his eyes that caught Willa Mae's attention. They were a startling green, and when they landed on her, they held something she had not seen in a long time: basic human decency. He took a table in the corner, and Willa Mae brought him whiskey without being asked. "Thank you kindly, miss," he said, and his voice was low and warm like summer honey. "You got a name, Willa Mae," she said softly. "That's a pretty name. I'm Henry Sawyer, just passing through on my way to Kansas." She nodded, made to turn away, but he spoke again. "You do not look like you want to be here." The observation was so unexpected, so uncomfortably accurate, that Willa Mae felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back quickly. "Want does not have much to do with anything, mister." "No, I suppose it does not." He studied her for a long moment, then took a slow sip of his whiskey. "But it should." Willa Mae did not know what to make of him. Most men who came to the Silver Rose wanted only one thing, and they were not shy about it. But Henry Sawyer just sat quietly, nursing his drink, watching the room with those sharp green eyes. When other men tried to pull Willa Mae onto their laps or grab at her, he would clear his throat, and somehow that small sound carried weight. The men would back off, grumbling. Gentry noticed. He sidled up to Willa Mae during a lull, his breath hot and sour on her neck. "That cowboy seems taken with you. Maybe you should give him some special attention upstairs. He looks like he has money." "I serve drinks," Willa Mae said firmly. "That is all." Gentry's hand closed on her arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "You do what I tell you, girl. I own you, remember." "No, you do not." The voice came from behind them, cool and level. Henry Sawyer stood there, his hand resting casually on the gun at his hip. He was not threatening exactly, but there was steel in his bearing that made Gentry step back. "This is none of your concern, stranger," Gentry blustered. "I am making it my concern. The lady said she serves drinks. Seems to me you should respect that." Henry's eyes never left Gentry's face. "Unless you want trouble." For a moment the whole saloon seemed to hold its breath. Then Gentry forced a laugh, released Willa Mae's arm, and backed away. "No trouble here, just a misunderstanding." Henry nodded slowly. "Glad we cleared that up." He turned to Willa Mae. "You all right, miss?" She could only nod, her heart hammering in her chest. No one had ever stood up for her before. No one had ever cared enough to try. Henry stayed until closing time. When the last drunk stumbled out and Lily and Grace headed upstairs, Willa Mae began wiping down tables. She was aware of Henry watching her, could feel the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. "How did you end up here?" he asked quietly. She could have lied, should have lied, but something about him made her want to tell the truth. "My father sold me 6 months ago. I was 17 and I had no say in the matter." She heard him draw in a sharp breath. "That is not right. That is not legal. Legal does not matter much when you have no power and no money." She kept her eyes on the table she was wiping. "But I am 18 now." I have been trying to save money to leave, but Gentry takes most of what I make for room and board. It is a system designed to keep girls like me trapped." "What if you did not have to stay trapped?" Willa Mae looked up sharply. Henry was leaning forward, his expression intense. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if you left, tonight, right now?" "I cannot just leave. Gentry would come after me. He has connections, friends. He would find me and bring me back, and it would be worse than before." "Not if you had someone to protect you." Henry stood, crossed the space between them in 3 long strides. "Listen to me, Willa Mae. I know we just met and you have no reason to trust me, but I am a decent man with a decent job. I work a ranch up in Kansas and I came down here to buy horses. I have saved up some money and I have plans to start my own place someday. I cannot stand by and let you stay in this situation. Come with me. I will get you out of here, set you up someplace safe, help you start over." It sounded too good to be true. It sounded like a fairy tale, and Willa Mae had stopped believing in those a long time ago. "Why would you do that? You do not even know me." "Because it is the right thing to do. Because my mama raised me to help folks when I can. Because when I look at you, I see someone who deserves better than this." He paused. "You do not owe me anything in return. I am not asking for favors. I am just offering you a way out if you want it." Willa Mae felt something crack open inside her chest, something that had been frozen solid for months. Hope. Dangerous, terrifying hope. "If we leave tonight, Gentry will send people after us. Then we better ride fast and far." Henry held out his hand. "What do you say, Willa Mae?" "You want to be free." She thought of her mother telling her to stay strong. She thought of the endless nights ahead, trapped in the Silver Rose, trapped in a life she never chose. She thought of this stranger with kind eyes who was offering her a lifeline. She took his hand. They moved quickly. Willa Mae slipped upstairs and grabbed the few possessions she had. A change of clothes, her mother's locket, the $11 she had managed to hide from Gentry. She left a note for Lily and Grace, thanking them and wishing them well. Then she crept back downstairs where Henry waited by the back door. "My horse is stabled down the street," he whispered. "We will have to go quiet." The night was brutally cold, the kind of cold that steals your breath. Willa Mae's thin coat was no match for it, but she barely felt the temperature. She was too focused on putting one foot in front of the other, on following Henry's broad back through the dark streets. His horse was a big bay gelding named Copper. Henry swung up into the saddle, then reached down and pulled Willa Mae up behind him. "Hold on tight," he said, and then they were moving, the horses' hooves muffled by snow, the town falling away behind them. They rode through the night, stopping only to rest the horse. Henry gave Willa Mae his coat when he saw her shivering, and she wrapped herself in it gratefully. It smelled like leather and sage and something else, something that was just him. They did not talk much. There was no need. They were both focused on distance, on escape. Dawn found them miles away in a landscape of rolling hills and bare trees. Henry finally pulled Copper to a stop near a frozen creek. "We will rest here for a bit. Let the horse drink and catch our breath." Willa Mae slid down from the saddle, her legs shaky from the long ride. Now that they had stopped, now that the immediate danger had passed, she felt the magnitude of what she had done crash over her. She had run away. She was free. She was terrified. Henry built a small fire, coaxed it to life with the ease of long practice. He pulled jerky and hardtack from his saddlebags and offered them to Willa Mae. She ate mechanically, not really tasting anything. "You all right?" Henry asked after a while. "I do not know," she admitted. "I do not know what I am." He nodded like he understood. "It is a lot to process. But you are safe now, I promise you that." "Where are we going?" "I have a friend who runs a boarding house in Fort Scott, Kansas. Nice lady named Mrs. Patterson. She can give you a room, help you find work if you want it. Honest work, I mean. Cooking, cleaning, that sort of thing. And Fort Scott is big enough that you can disappear if Gentry comes looking. You have thought this through. I had all night to think while we were riding. He poked at the fire with a stick. I meant what I said, Willa Mae. You do not owe me anything. Once we get to Fort Scott, you can start fresh. Make your own choices. She studied him across the fire. In the growing daylight, she could see the strong lines of his face, the stubble on his jaw, the way his hair fell across his forehead. He was handsome in a rough-hewn way, but more than that, he was kind. Kindness was so rare in her world that she hardly knew what to do with it. "Why did you really help me?" she asked softly. Henry looked up, met her eyes. "My sister was in a bad situation once, different from yours, but bad. A man she thought loved her turned out to be cruel. He hurt her, controlled her. By the time my family found out, she was already gone, took her own life because she could not see any way out." His voice was rough with old pain. "I was 16 when it happened. I swore then that if I ever had the chance to help someone in a similar situation, I would. So when I saw you tonight, saw how Gentry was treating you, I could not just walk away. I would not." Willa Mae felt tears slide down her cheeks. "I am sorry about your sister. Me too. Every day." He cleared his throat, looked away. "But maybe some good can come from it. Maybe helping you is a way to honor her memory." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the fire crackle and the wind sigh through the bare branches. Willa Mae felt something shifting inside her, some fundamental recalibration of her understanding of the world. Maybe not all men were like her father, like Gentry. Maybe some men were like Henry Sawyer. They reached Fort Scott 3 days later, after hard riding and sleeping rough. Willa Mae was exhausted, filthy, and more grateful than she had words for. Mrs. Patterson turned out to be a plump woman in her 50s with shrewd eyes and a warm smile. She took one look at Willa Mae and hustled her upstairs for a hot bath and a clean bed. "You did good, Henry, Mrs. Patterson said, patting his arm. "Real good. I will take care of her now." Henry nodded, but Willa Mae saw him hesitate at the door. He looked back at her, something unreadable in his expression. "You take care, Willa Mae Mitchell. You deserve good things." "Wait," she heard herself say. "Will I see you again?" He smiled, slow and genuine. "I will be around. I have business in Fort Scott for a few more days, and I will check in before I head back to Kansas, make sure you are settling in all right." Over the next week, Willa Mae began to piece her life back together. Mrs. Patterson gave her a room in exchange for help with cooking and cleaning, and Willa Mae threw herself into the work gratefully. It felt good to be useful, to be making her own way. She began to sleep without nightmares. She began to remember how to smile, and Henry kept his promise. He stopped by every day, always with some excuse. He needed to ask Mrs. Patterson about something. He brought fresh bread from the bakery. He wanted to make sure Willa Mae had enough warm clothes. Each visit was brief, proper, but Willa Mae found herself looking forward to them with an intensity that surprised her. On his last day in Fort Scott, Henry asked if she would take a walk with him. They strolled through the town square, past shops decked out for the late winter season, past families going about their daily business. It was so normal, so mundane, and Willa Mae treasured every moment. "I have to head back to the ranch tomorrow," Henry said finally. "My boss is expecting me, and I am already later than I said I would be." Willa Mae nodded, tried to ignore the sinking feeling in her stomach. "I understand, and I want to thank you again for everything you have done. You saved my life, Henry. You would have found a way to save yourself eventually. You are stronger than you know." He stopped walking, turned to face her. "But I have to be honest with you about something. These past few days, getting to know you, I have found myself thinking that maybe I do not want to just ride away and never see you again. Her heart kicked hard against her ribs. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I care about you, Willa Mae. I know the timing is strange, and I know you have been through hell. I am not trying to rush you into anything or make you uncomfortable. But when I look at you, I see someone brave and smart and beautiful, and I want the chance to know you better, if you want that too." He paused. "If you do not, that is fine. Like I said, no pressure, but I had to say it before I left, or I would have regretted it forever." Willa Mae stared at him, her mind racing. She had spent months believing that all men were the same, that they all wanted to use her, control her, break her. But Henry had been nothing but respectful, nothing but kind. He had asked for nothing in return for his help, and now he was standing here, baring his heart, giving her all the power to accept or reject him. "I want that too," she whispered. "I have been thinking about you constantly. I was dreading you leaving. But Henry, I am damaged. I have been through things that have changed me. I do not know if I can be what you need." He reached out slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, and took her hand. His palm was warm and calloused. "You are not damaged, you are surviving. And I do not need you to be anything other than who you are. We can take this slow as you want. I will write to you, come visit when I can. We will figure it out together." She squeezed his hand, felt the tears coming again. But these were different tears. These were tears of relief, of joy, of possibilities she had not dared to imagine. "I would like that very much." The months that followed were the happiest of Willa Mae's life. Henry wrote to her every week without fail, long letters full of details about his work on the ranch, stories about the horses he tended, questions about her life in Fort Scott. She wrote back just as faithfully, telling him about her days helping Mrs. Patterson, about the friends she was making, about the person she was becoming now that she was free to choose, and he visited as often as he could. Once a month, sometimes more, he would ride down from Kansas. They would walk together, talk for hours, slowly building something real and true. Henry never pushed her, never demanded more than she was ready to give. He held her hand, made her laugh, listened when she needed to talk about the dark places in her past. He was patient in a way that made her fall in love with him piece by piece, day by day. By the time summer arrived, Willa Mae knew with absolute certainty that she wanted to spend her life with this man. And from the way Henry looked at her, she suspected he felt the same. They were sitting by the creek on a warm June evening when he finally asked. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and Henry had been unusually quiet all day. "Willa Mae," he said finally, turning to face her. "I have been thinking a lot about the future, about my plans for my own ranch, about the kind of life I want to build. And every time I imagine it, you are there. I cannot picture a future without you in it." Her breath caught. "Henry." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band. "This was my grandmother's ring. It is not fancy, but it meant something to her, and it means something to me. Willa Mae Mitchell, I love you. I love your strength, your courage, your kindness. I love the way you see the world and the way you make me want to be better. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life making you happy?" Willa Mae felt her whole body flood with warmth. 6 months ago, she had been trapped, hopeless, believing she would never be anything more than what men decided she should be. And now here was this wonderful man, asking her to be his partner, his equal, his wife. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, Henry, I will marry you. I love you so much." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and then he kissed her for the first time. It was gentle and sweet and full of promise, and Willa Mae felt like she was finally, truly home. They were married in August of 1879 in a simple ceremony at the church in Fort Scott. Mrs. Patterson stood up as Willa Mae's witness, and Henry's boss from the ranch, a gruff but kind man named Tom Wilson, stood up for him. Willa Mae wore a dress that Mrs. Patterson had helped her sew, pale blue cotton with lace at the collar. She felt beautiful. Henry looked at her like she had hung the moon. After the ceremony, they had a small celebration at Mrs. Patterson's boarding house. There was cake and dancing and laughter, and Willa Mae thought her heart might burst from happiness. This was what she had dreamed of during those dark nights at the Silver Rose. This was freedom. This was love. This was choosing her own path. Henry had saved up enough money to rent a small house on the outskirts of the ranch where he worked. It was not much, just 3 rooms and a porch, but it was theirs. He carried Willa Mae over the threshold, both of them laughing, and set her down gently in the middle of their parlor. "Welcome home, Mrs. Sawyer," he said softly. She cupped his face in her hands, looked into those green eyes that had first shown her kindness. "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for loving me. Loving you is the easiest thing I have ever done." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "And I am going to spend every day proving it to you." That first year of marriage was not without challenges. Willa Mae had nightmares sometimes, waking up gasping and afraid, convinced she was back in the Silver Rose. Henry would hold her through them, murmuring reassurances until she calmed. She flinched sometimes when he moved too quickly, and he learned to telegraph his movements to give her space and time. But slowly, steadily, she healed. Henry's love was a constant, steady thing that she could depend on. He never raised his voice, never raised his hand. He treated her like a partner in every way, asking her opinion on decisions, valuing her thoughts and ideas. He taught her to ride horses, and she taught him to cook better than burnt beans. They built a life together, brick by brick, moment by moment. Willa Mae also found purpose in helping other women. Word got around about her story, and occasionally women in difficult situations would seek her out. She would give them advice, sometimes a place to stay, always an understanding ear. Henry supported her in this completely, even though it meant extra mouths to feed and extra complications. He understood that this was part of who she was now, that her own suffering had given her empathy and strength. By their 2nd anniversary, they had saved enough money for Henry to make a down payment on a small ranch of his own. It was 80 acres of decent grazing land near the town of Baxter Springs, Kansas, with a house that needed work but had good bones. They moved in during the fall of 1881, and Willa Mae had never been so excited. This was truly theirs, a future they were building with their own hands. "What should we name it?" Henry asked as they stood on the porch, looking out over their land. Willa Mae thought for a moment. "The Free Ranch." Henry looked at her, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Because you are free. Because we both are." She leaned against him, felt his arm come around her shoulders. "Free to choose our own way, free to build something good. The Free Ranch it is." They worked hard over the next year. Henry built up their herd of cattle, hired a couple of hands to help with the heavy work. Willa Mae turned the house into a home, sewing curtains, planting a garden, baking bread that made the whole place smell like comfort. They ate dinner together every night, talking about their days, making plans, dreaming out loud. And in the spring of 1882, Willa Mae realized she was pregnant. She was terrified at first. She had seen what childbirth did to women, had lost her own mother to a difficult delivery. But Henry's joy was so pure, so absolute that it calmed her fears. He promised he would be there every step of the way, that he would take care of her no matter what. "You are the strongest person I know," he told her, his hand resting gently on her still flat stomach. "You survived things that would have broken most people. You can survive this too, and I will be right beside you." She gave birth to a son in December of 1882, on a snowy night when the midwife almost did not make it through the drifts. The labor was long and hard, but Willa Mae thought of her mother, thought of all the women who had come before her, and she found strength she did not know she had. And when the baby finally arrived, wailing and perfect, she felt a love so fierce it stole her breath. They named him James Henry Sawyer, after Henry's father and Henry himself. He had his father's dark hair and his mother's determination, and from the moment he entered the world, he owned their hearts completely. Henry was a natural father. He would walk the floor with James for hours when the baby was fussy, singing old cowboy songs in his rough baritone. He changed diapers without complaint, helped with feedings, marveled at every tiny milestone. Watching him with their son, Willa Mae fell in love with him all over again. The years flowed past like water. James grew into a sturdy toddler, then a curious little boy. The ranch prospered. Henry's hard work and honest dealings earned him respect in the community, and the free ranch became known for quality cattle and fair prices. Willa Mae continued her work helping women, and she and Henry became foster parents to a teenage girl named Sarah who had been orphaned. They gave her a home, put her through school, and treated her like family. In 1885, Willa Mae gave birth to twin daughters. The pregnancy had been difficult, and she spent the last 2 months on bed rest, but the girls arrived healthy and screaming. They named them Eleanor Mae and Catherine Grace, after both their mothers and the women who had been kind to Willa Mae at the Silver Rose. The twins had red gold hair and mischievous spirits, and they turned the household upside down in the best possible way. Henry built an addition onto the house to accommodate their growing family. Now they had 5 bedrooms, a proper dining room, and a porch that wrapped around 2 sides. Willa Mae filled it with love and laughter, with home-cooked meals and bedtime stories, with everything she had never had as a child. Sometimes, late at night when the children were asleep, Willa Mae would sit on the porch with Henry and marvel at the life they had built. She was 27 years old now, and the frightened 17-year-old girl who had been sold like property seemed like a different person from another lifetime. "You ever regret it?" she asked Henry one evening as they watched the sun set over their land. "Taking a chance on me? All the complications I brought into your life." He looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Regret you, Willa Mae? You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You and our children are my whole world. I thank God every day that I walked into that saloon and found you. I was broken when you found me. You were bent, not broken, and even if you had been broken, I would have loved you just the same." He took her hand, laced his fingers through hers. "You made me better, Willa Mae. You taught me what real courage looks like. You showed me that love is not just a feeling but a choice we make every day. I am honored to be your husband." She leaned her head on his shoulder, felt tears of gratitude sting her eyes. "I love you, Henry Sawyer, more than I have words for. I love you too, Willa Mae Sawyer. Always have. Always will." In 1888, they paid off the mortgage on the free ranch. It was theirs, free and clear, a testament to years of hard work and sacrifice. They celebrated with a big party, inviting all their neighbors and friends. Mrs. Patterson came down from Fort Scott, older now but still sharp as a tack. Sarah brought the young man she was courting, a quiet farmer named Daniel who clearly adored her. The children ran wild with the other ranch kids, and there was music and dancing until late into the night. As Willa Mae moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and hugs, she felt overwhelmed by the goodness of it all. She thought about that terrified girl in the back of Silas Gentry's wagon, certain her life was over. If she could go back and tell that girl what was waiting for her, that girl would never have believed it. But it was real. All of it was real. The house full of children's laughter, the man who loved her with his whole heart, the community that respected her, the work that gave her purpose. She had been sold at 17, set free at 18 by a cowboy with kind eyes, and married willingly to the love of her life. And now, 10 years later, she was more than free. She was happy. Henry found her near midnight, standing on the porch watching the stars. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, rested his chin on top of her head. "Good party. The best." She turned in his arms, looked up at him. In the lamplight spilling from the house, she could see the lines starting to form around his eyes, the first hints of gray in his hair. He was 32 now, still strong and vital, but time was leaving its mark on both of them. She did not mind. Every line, every gray hair was earned through living, through loving, through building something that mattered. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How lucky I am. How much I love you. How grateful I am for every single day we have together." He kissed her softly. "The luck is all mine, Willa Mae. You are my miracle." The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and sorrows. Willa Mae's father died in 1890, drunk and alone in that same shack outside Joplin. She felt nothing when she got the news, except maybe a distant sadness for what could have been if he had been a better man. She did not attend the funeral. That chapter of her life was closed, and she felt no need to reopen it. In 1892, they got word that Silas Gentry had been arrested for trafficking women across state lines. The Silver Rose was shut down, and the women who worked there were freed. Willa Mae wept when she heard, thinking of Lily and Grace and all the others who had been trapped. She hoped they found their own Henry Sawyers, their own second chances. James grew into a fine young man, strong and honorable like his father. The twins were 10 years old, and Sarah had married Daniel and given Willa Mae and Henry their first grandchild, a little girl named Hope. The free ranch continued to thrive, and Henry took on more hands, including a young man who had been in trouble with the law but was trying to turn his life around. Henry believed in second chances, just like someone had believed in giving Willa Mae a second chance. On their 15th anniversary in 1894, Henry surprised Willa Mae with a trip to Denver. It was the first time either of them had left Kansas in years, and they felt like newlyweds again, exploring the city, staying in a hotel, eating at restaurants. They saw their first moving picture show and held hands like teenagers. 15 years, Henry said as they sat in their hotel room on their last night. "Feels like yesterday and forever ago all at once. I know what you mean." Willa Mae was 33 now, and she had never felt more beautiful or more loved. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life, that I get to wake up next to you every day, that we built all of this together." "We did build it together," Henry agreed. "Equal partners from the start. That is how it is supposed to be." She moved into his arms, felt his heart beating steady against her cheek. "I want 15 more years, 50 more years, forever." "You got it, darling. Forever sounds just about right to me." They returned home to find that the twins had talked James into letting them ride the horses unsupervised, and Sarah had given birth to a second child, a boy this time. Life on the free ranch rolled on in its beautiful, chaotic way. In 1896, Willa Mae opened a small school on their property for the children of ranch workers and nearby families who could not afford to send their kids into town. She taught reading, writing, and arithmetic, but also practical skills like sewing and cooking. Henry supported her completely, even though it meant less help around the house. He hired a woman from town to assist with the heavier chores so Willa Mae could focus on teaching. The school became her passion. She saw herself in some of those children, the ones from poor families with limited options. She was determined to give them the education she never had, to open doors for them that had been closed to her. Henry would come home sometimes to find her still grading papers by lamplight, and he would bring her tea and kiss the top of her head and tell her he was proud of her. James left for college in 1898, studying animal husbandry at Kansas State. It was hard to let him go, but Willa Mae was fiercely proud. Her son was getting opportunities she had only dreamed of. The twins were 16 and boy crazy, and Sarah was pregnant with her third child. The free ranch had grown to 200 acres, with a herd of prize-winning cattle and horses that were known throughout the state. And through it all, Henry loved her. Every single day, in 1,000 small ways, he showed her that she was cherished. He brought her wildflowers from the range, fixed things before she had to ask, listened to her talk about her students, held her when she was sad, laughed with her when she was happy. He was her partner, her best friend, her great love. In 1900, as the century turned, they celebrated their 21st anniversary with a big party. James came home from college with a young woman he was courting. The twins were beautiful young women now, with beaux of their own. Sarah and Daniel brought their 4 children. Mrs. Patterson had passed away the year before, but her spirit seemed present in the laughter and love that filled the free ranch. Willa Mae stood in the middle of the celebration, looking around at all these people she loved, and felt a contentment so deep it was almost like prayer. She was 40 years old now, her honey-colored hair streaked with silver, her face lined with years of laughter and tears. She had lived through darkness and come out into the light. She had been broken and had healed. She had been sold and had been set free. And she had loved and been loved in return. Henry came up behind her, his arms coming around her waist in that familiar gesture. "Happy anniversary, my love. Happy anniversary." She turned in his arms, looked up into those green eyes that still made her heart skip. "Thank you for giving me this life. Thank you for choosing me." "Always," he said simply. "In this life and the next, you are my choice, Willa Mae, forever." The years that followed were golden. James graduated and came back to help run the ranch, bringing his wife Elizabeth with him. They lived in a house Henry built for them on the north corner of the property. The twins both married decent men who treated them well, and Willa Mae made sure both girls understood that they always had a home at the free ranch if they needed it. She wanted them to know they always had choices, always had somewhere safe to land. Sarah's children grew up strong and healthy, and the free ranch became a gathering place for the whole extended family. Sunday dinners often had 20 or more people around the table, and Willa Mae loved every chaotic minute of it. This was the family she had always wanted, the home she had always dreamed of. Henry slowed down a bit as he reached 50, letting James take on more of the daily operations of the ranch. But he still rode out most mornings, still loved being on the land they had built together. And every night, he came home to Willa Mae, and they sat on that porch they had sat on for over 20 years, holding hands and watching the sun set. In 1905, James and Elizabeth gave them their first grandson. They named him Henry James Sawyer, and when Willa Mae held him for the first time, she thought about the cycle of life, about how love continues across generations. This baby boy would never know the darkness she had survived, would grow up free and loved and safe. That was her legacy. That was what she and Henry had built together. "Look at you," Henry said softly, watching her with the baby. "You are glowing, grandmother," she laughed. "Grandmother, that is going to take some getting used to." "You are beautiful," he said seriously. "Just as beautiful as the day I first saw you in that saloon. More beautiful, actually, because now I know the woman you are inside and out, and I fall more in love with you every single day. Henry Sawyer, you are going to make me cry." "Then cry, darling. Happy tears are good for the soul." As the years rolled toward 1910, the free ranch became something of a legend in the area. It was known not just for quality livestock, but for the way it was run with fairness and compassion. Henry gave jobs to men others had given up on. Willa Mae's school educated children who would have otherwise gone without. They sponsored community events, helped neighbors in need, and lived their values every single day. People would sometimes ask Willa Mae the secret to a long, happy marriage. She would think for a moment and then say, respect, kindness, choosing each other every single day, even on the hard days, and marrying someone who sees you as an equal partner, not as property or less than. She never talked publicly about her past, about being sold or the silver rose. But those who knew her story looked at her with respect, understanding that she had transformed pain into purpose, trauma into triumph. On their 30th anniversary in 1909, Henry and Willa Mae renewed their vows in a simple ceremony on the ranch. Their children and grandchildren surrounded them, and as Willa Mae looked into Henry's face, now lined and weathered but still achingly dear, she said the same words she had said 30 years before. I choose you, Henry Sawyer. I will always choose you. And I choose you, Willa Mae Sawyer. My partner, my love, my everything. They were 51 and 54 now, with gray hair and creaky joints and reading glasses perched on their noses. But when Henry kissed her, Willa Mae felt 18 again, felt that spark of possibility and promise that had started everything. That night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, they sat on their porch in the rocking chairs Henry had built years before. The stars were brilliant overhead, and the night was soft and warm. Do you remember when I asked you if you wanted to be free? Henry asked quietly. Every day, Willa Mae said. I remember every moment of that night, how scared I was, how hopeful, how you looked like an answer to a prayer I did not know I had been praying. You took such a leap of faith, trusting me. I have never taken that lightly. You earned that trust 1,000 times over. She reached for his hand, laced her fingers through his. After 30 years, they still fit together perfectly. You gave me more than freedom, Henry. You gave me a life worth living. You gave me love. You gave me a family. You gave me myself back. He raised her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles gently. You gave me all those things too. Before you, I was just going through the motions. You gave me purpose. You made me want to be better, do better. You are the best part of me, Willa Mae. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the ranch. Somewhere in the distance, a horse nickered. Crickets sang in the grass. The wind whispered through the cottonwood trees Henry had planted the year James was born. I love you, Willa Mae said, simple and true. I love you too, Henry answered. Always have. Always will. In the spring of 1910, Willa Mae turned 49 and realized with some surprise that she had been happy longer than she had been sad. The math worked out that way. She had suffered for the first 17 years of her life, endured hell for 6 months, and then lived in joy and love for 31 years and counting. The happiness had won. The darkness had not claimed her. She had survived, and more than that, she had thrived. She shared this revelation with Henry one morning over breakfast, and he smiled that slow smile she had loved for 3 decades. That is because you are a fighter, Willa Mae. You did not let them break you, and you built something beautiful from the ashes. I am in awe of you. We built it together, she corrected. I could not have done any of this without you. Partners, he said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. Partners, she agreed, until the very end. The very end seemed far away that bright spring morning, but of course, no one knows the measure of their days. Henry was 54 and strong as an ox, still riding out every day, still working alongside his men. So when he came in one evening complaining of a pain in his chest, Willa Mae was concerned but not overly worried. Probably just indigestion, they agreed. He had eaten too much of her beef stew at dinner, but the pain did not go away. It got worse through the night, and by morning, Henry was sweating and gray-faced. Willa Mae sent James for the doctor while she sat with Henry, holding his hand, trying not to panic. The doctor arrived within the hour and examined Henry carefully. When he was done, his face was grave. "It is his heart. He needs complete rest, no work, no exertion. Even then." He trailed off, and Willa Mae understood what he was not saying. Henry was confined to bed, which nearly drove him crazy. He was not a man built for lying still. But Willa Mae was firm with him, and James ran the ranch, and the weeks turned into months. Sometimes Henry felt better, would argue that he should be allowed to at least sit on the porch. Other times he was so weak he could barely lift his head. Through it all, Willa Mae was by his side. She read to him, talked to him, held his hand for hours at a time. The children and grandchildren visited regularly, filling the house with life and noise. Henry seemed to rally when they were around, seemed to draw strength from their presence. But in October of 1910, on a cool evening when the leaves were turning gold, Henry took a turn for the worse. The doctor came, examined him, and shook his head. It was time to say goodbyes. Willa Mae sent for all the children. They came quickly, gathering around Henry's bed with tears streaming down their faces. Henry spoke to each of them, imparted wisdom and love, made them promise to take care of each other and their mother. When they had all said their pieces, when the room was empty except for Willa Mae and Henry, he reached for her hand. "I am sorry," he whispered, his voice weak. "I wanted more time with you." Willa Mae was crying so hard she could barely speak. "Do not apologize. You gave me 31 years of happiness. You gave me everything. You saved me, Henry Sawyer. You saved me too." He squeezed her hand, his grip so faint. "I love you, Willa Mae, more than my own life. Promise me you will keep living. Keep teaching, keep helping people, keep being the amazing woman you are." "I promise," she choked out. "But I do not know how to do this without you. You are strong enough. You have always been strong enough." His eyes were drifting closed. "Thank you for choosing me all those years ago. Thank you for the life we built. Thank you for our children. Thank you for loving me, always," she whispered. "I will always love you in this life and the next, Henry, forever." He smiled, just a small curve of his lips. "Forever," he echoed. And then he was gone, slipping away as gently as a sigh. Willa Mae sat there for a long time, holding his hand, feeling her heart break into a million pieces. She had lost the love of her life, her partner, her best friend, the man who had seen her at her lowest and had lifted her up. The man who had given her freedom, given her love, given her a reason to believe in goodness again. The grief was crushing, overwhelming, a physical pain in her chest. But even through the tears, even through the agony of loss, she felt gratitude. Gratitude that she had known this kind of love. Gratitude that she had experienced 31 years of partnership and joy. Gratitude that Henry Sawyer had walked into the Silver Rose on a cold January night and had changed her life forever. The funeral was huge. It seemed like half of Kansas showed up to pay their respects. Henry had been loved and respected by so many people, and they came to honor his memory. Willa Mae stood at the graveside, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, and felt the weight of all those years pressing down on her. They buried him on the ranch, on a hill overlooking the land he had loved. Willa Mae had a simple headstone carved, Henry James Sawyer, 1856–1910. Beloved husband, father, and friend. He lived with honor. The months after Henry's death were the hardest of Willa Mae's life. She had survived poverty, abuse, and captivity, but she had never experienced loss like this. The house felt empty without him. The bed felt too big. She would turn to tell him something and remember he was not there, and the grief would hit her all over again. But she had promised him she would keep living, and she kept her promises. She leaned on her children, drew strength from her grandchildren. She continued teaching at the school, found purpose in helping others. And slowly, she began to heal. James ran the free ranch with the same integrity his father had shown, and Willa Mae was proud beyond measure. The twins visited often, bringing their families. Sarah came every Sunday with food and hugs and a listening ear. They rallied around her, and Willa Mae realized that this too was Henry's legacy. He had taught their children how to love, how to show up for each other, how to be a family. Willa Mae lived for 18 more years after Henry's death. She saw all her grandchildren grow up, some of them marry and have children of their own. She taught hundreds of students over the years, many of whom came back to visit and tell her how she had changed their lives. She helped countless women escape bad situations, gave them shelter and support and hope. But every night, before she went to sleep, she would sit on the porch and look up at the stars and feel Henry's presence. She would remember that young cowboy with kind eyes who had offered her freedom. She would remember 31 years of love and laughter and partnership. She would remember being chosen, being cherished, being set free. Willa Mae Mitchell Sawyer died peacefully in her sleep in the spring of 1928. She was 67 years old, surrounded by the family she and Henry had created, in the house they had built together on the free ranch. Her last words, spoken to James, who sat by her bedside, were, "Tell your father I am coming home. Tell him I kept my promise. Tell him I love him still." They buried her next to Henry on that hill overlooking the ranch. The headstone read, "Willa Mae Mitchell Sawyer, 1861–1928. Beloved wife, mother, teacher, and friend, she lived with courage." And if you walk that hill today, you can still see those two headstones side by side, still standing after all these years. Two people who found each other in the darkness and chose to walk into the light together. A cowboy who set a girl free. A woman who chose to love him back. A partnership that changed two lives and countless others. Their great-great-grandchildren still run the free ranch, still tell the story of how it all began. They talk about Henry's kindness and Willa Mae's strength, about a love story that started in a saloon and ended in a lifetime of devotion. They remember that their family was built on the foundation of respect, choice, and unwavering commitment to each other. The school Willa Mae started still operates, though it is much bigger now and has a proper building. There is a plaque on the wall that reads, "Founded by Willa Mae Sawyer, who believed every child deserved a chance." The town of Baxter Springs has a street named after Henry and a park named after Willa Mae, small tributes to two people who made their corner of Kansas a better place. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun sets over the prairie and the wind whispers through the grass, people say you can feel something in the air. A presence, a warmth, a sense of enduring love. Some say it is just imagination, the romance of an old story, but others know better. They know that love like Henry and Willa Mae's does not just disappear. It echoes through generations. It lives on in the lives they touched. It remains woven into the very fabric of the land they cherished. She was sold at 17, lost and hopeless and afraid. He was 22, a cowboy with a good heart and a commitment to doing what was right. He set her free at 18, asking nothing in return, giving her back the choices that had been stolen from her. And she married him willingly, joyfully, because he showed her what real love looked like. Because he treated her as an equal. Because he gave her a reason to believe in happiness again. Their story is not just a tale of rescue, though it starts there. It is a story of partnership, of building something beautiful together, of choosing each other every single day for 31 years. It is a story of healing and hope, of second chances and new beginnings. It is a story that proves love can triumph over even the darkest circumstances, that one person's kindness can change the trajectory of another person's entire life. The free ranch still stands, a testament to what two people can create when they work together with respect and love. The family that still gathers there every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every summer reunion, they carry Henry and Willa Mae's legacy in their bones. They have inherited not just land but values. Treat people with dignity, help those in need, choose kindness, build something that matters. And on the mantle in the main house, there is a photograph taken on Henry and Willa Mae's 30th anniversary. They are standing on the porch of their home, surrounded by children and grandchildren. Henry's arm is around Willa Mae's shoulders, and they are both smiling at the camera with such joy, such contentment, that it radiates from the old sepia-toned image. You can see in their faces everything they built together, every obstacle they overcame, every moment of love they shared. That photograph has been there for decades now, a touchstone for the family. When the children are scared or sad or facing difficulties, someone inevitably takes them to that photograph and tells them the story about how great-great-grandma Willa Mae was sold when she was just 17. About how great-great-grandpa Henry walked into a saloon and refused to look the other way. About how he set her free and she chose to love him, and together they built a dynasty of decency and compassion. It is a story worth telling, a story worth remembering. A story that reminds us that even in the hardest times, even in the darkest places, love can find a way. That one person's courage to do the right thing can ripple out across generations. That being chosen, being cherished, being set free are gifts beyond price. Willa Mae Mitchell was sold at 17, a victim of circumstance and cruelty. But she did not stay a victim. With Henry Sawyer's help, she became a survivor, then a thriver, then a woman who helped others survive and thrive. Henry Sawyer was a cowboy who could have walked away, could have minded his own business, could have let injustice stand. But he chose differently. He chose to act, to help, to love. And because of those choices, because of that one night in January 1879, when a young cowboy decided to do the right thing, dozens of lives were changed. Hundreds of students were educated. Countless women were given hope and help. A family was created that still stands strong nearly a century and a half later. A ranch was built that represents the best of what people can accomplish together. That is the power of choice. That is the power of love. That is the legacy of Henry and Willa Mae Sawyer, two people who met in the worst of circumstances and chose to create something beautiful. Their story is not just history. It is inspiration. It is proof that we all have the power to change lives, to make a difference, to choose light over darkness. And that is how the story ends, not with sadness or loss, but with triumph. With a love that lasted beyond death. With a family that continues to thrive. With a ranch that still welcomes people in need. With a legacy of kindness that echoes through time. She was sold at 17. He set her free at 18. She married him willingly. And together they lived happily ever after, building a life that mattered, a love that endured, and a story that will be told for generations to come.